Judy's here to give us a presentation about walkability and kind of the future plans and the comprehensive plan for the township. So I'll let you go ahead. Go for it. Derek, you.
It's not, we're not doing a PowerPoint. We're going to do a discussion and then mostly Q&A. I thought would be a little more interactive.
Sure.
And rather than me tell you things you don't need to know, I'll answer the questions that you actually want to know about.
Yeah, that if Judy references the comp plan, I'll pull up on here as well.
Okay. Floor is yours.
You can go to page 82 and then get down to 87.
200.
It's it must have been appendices. The down behind it. Yeah, it's like 99 pages of
110. The first came over, I was like, 200 pages.
So a little briefing about walkability in Montgomery Township. I've been working with the township since 2001. Started working as landscape architect of the Shade Tree Commission, and I'm now a planner also. I have to tell you that in the 2000s and actually the early 2000s, up until about 2018, 19, walkability was not a thing. Transportation was about moving people, goods, and services in vehicles, automobiles, and trucks through the township. It was about getting people from destination to destination. It was all about automobiles, pedestrian connectivity, even the ability to cross intersections. You would see more often than not that no pedestrians because you couldn't work it out. I was once at a transportation workshop given by the Oregon Department of Transportation back when PennDOT was adopting their state, their new friendlier, I'm a friend of municipalities guidebook, maybe about 10 years ago. And the gentleman giving the presentation had a line that just stayed with me for a long time. He said, whenever you see an intersection that says no pedestrian crossing, that means we as transportation engineers have failed. And I took that to heart because I'm not a transportation engineer, so I didn't yet fail. I like that. But also as a planner, we're about the streetscape, the experience of the people, the multimodal aspect of streets, the complete streets, which is what the PennDOT presentation was about through what the Oregon Department of Transportation. But it's about everyone being able to use the street. So Montgomery Township was all about the cars, the trucks originally, but in the late teens, and certainly now, it's become more about alternative methods of transportation too, pedestrians, bicycles, more connections with public transportation, not just each person getting in their car individually and going to their destination, having multiple methods to get from point A to point B, and to our places of business, places of employment, our schools, our parks, our places of worship, having ways to connect them. So in that time, as we review subdivisions and land developments, we've been making recommendations as consultants. I'm with Gilmore Associates. We're the township planner, landscape architect. I lead with my favorite too, township engineer and township traffic engineer. So we have 4 appointments and we're all in the office together. My office happens to be next to Damon Drummond, who is the transportation engineer for the township. So we talk a lot. In fact, 2 years ago, we did a walkability study of 309 corridor between the mall and Airport Square. And we had recommendations for some pedestrian connections, some retiming and re-signalization of one of the, or reconfiguration of one of the traffic signals to get across from the mall to Airport Square, because people were going back and forth and they were doing it, but just not in a safe way. So it's all about getting pedestrians or bicyclists across and through corridors to where they want to be.
I've seen them playing Frogger going across.
It is. It's literally like Frogger. So that one light's being reconfigured right at the whole little jug handle thing. We're looking at the other 2 intersections. As land developments come in, we're asking the applicants and actually requesting them to put in sidewalk along the street, sidewalks or trails, depending where we are. And we've been seeing a lot of it come in. The new Luxor building by Westrom down behind the motel, They're required to get a pedestrian connection up to the intersection where the light is that goes across through the line to the Nap Road extension. And they're putting in a pedestrian crossing there across 309. They had a lot of resistance. I think the township had a lot of resistance from the applicant on that and their consultants, saying it's dangerous, nobody walks there. The problem is people were crossing there. People were staying in the roadway or there for the celebrations being held there and were walking across. And the new residents of Luxor, there's a Krispy Kreme being built across the street. Tell me no one's going to walk over to get, a cup of coffee. The new Luxor building, when they came in, their whole shtick was that these are people that, we're marketing to the millennials and the younger ones. And they don't want to have cars. They want to get from point A to point B. They're environmentally sensitive. And then they're telling us they're not going to walk across 309. So that was prolonged, but through the conditional use process, the township was able to get that connection. Krispy Kreme had to put in a little pedestrian connection. Trying to think who else. Even some of the little like the out parcels where they're coming in for adaptive reuse and redevelopment. As they come in, if there's sidewalks missing, we're asking for the sidewalk as part of the requirements of subdivision land development and consistent with the comp plan, and we're getting it. We're not asking for more than is required, but those little pieces, those little missing teeth are filling in the gaps because people are walking. So then in the comprehensive plan, we reference under transportation, walkability is an issue. And I'll just read the first sentence. The function of the transportation system is to provide for the movement of people and goods between places. The adequacy of the system is directly influenced by the type and size of the population growth and land development that occur along the network. But that first sentence is to provide for the movement of people and goods between places. It's really all of that. So it encompasses all the ways that you move people and goods between places. And we do look at multimodal. So then if we jump up to page 87. Sorry.
87.
Yeah, sorry about that there. I didn't include one first. These are some of the existing things now. The township has a township trail plan. It goes back a bit. Montgomery County Planning Commission did it, but we use that as a reference. In fact, we've used that recently to reference some trails that were on this plan, some off-road trails to get some easements through to provide for future trails. And then in 2015, there was a bicycle pedestrian network prioritized implementation plan, which is a little out of date in and of itself, but we do use it as a reference as we go through. At this point, the township is not doing a new walkability study. I know walkability studies are popular and you can get money from WalkWorks to do just the planning portion of it. But having just done the comprehensive plan, a lot of what the WalkWorks method would be to gather the public, get their input. And we've already done that recently. The township has done that recently with the comprehensive plan. And I believe that the township has a feel for the need and desire of the township residents to have more walkability, and they're doing it through implementation as subdivision land developments come in and as opportunities for multimodal transportation grants might come and rise. A lot of the township transportation money though is still going to fix signals and intersections, not just new trails, but to increase the pedestrian experience and ability to use those intersections. And then page 88 has the transportation implementation strategies and recommendations in the comp plan. And the first one, I think, says it all. Maintain and improve streets to ensure the safety of residents, pedestrians, and motorists, and livability of neighborhoods while maintaining the high level of connectivity of the township street pattern. So again, it's about people, pedestrians, everything. It's not just moving cars and trucks. Second was develop policies regarding traffic calming, including the participation of any neighborhood that can be affected by the addition of traffic calming methods. or measures, so we're working with that. Next one, I really like, and the township is working with it still, working with SEPTA and the partnership TMA of Montgomery County to ensure that the public transportation needs of residents are being met and analyze potential public transportation options and alternatives. And I know that SEPTA was it May?
Yeah.
And they shared with you the news that none of us liked was that they were eliminating Montgomery from their micro transit. They did have the comment period open. I know that at least 20 people in my office answered that. And spoke up what it counted, shared it. Yeah, and I saw it posted in a couple of prominent places for other people to make comments. So hopefully there's been some comments and SEPTA can rethink their option to get rid of the microtransit, because as we talked about during the comp plan process, when the partnership TMA joined the planning commission for one of the sessions on transportation, it's that last mile that's very important. When we say last mile, it's not a literal mile, it's that distance between when you get off public transportation and you're getting to your end destination, whether it's your place of employment or it's an appointment that you have, or it's even shopping, but most importantly, the place of employment, because you're going back and forth every day. When you think about where people have to go, think about walking a mile in the ice and snow, or a mile in 99-degree heat and humidity. It's really difficult, and it's an impediment to getting people to where they need to be. So if there was some microtransit or something else to help with that last mile, it would really help. But meanwhile, the township is doing all they can to provide for the connections and the pedestrian routes, pedestrian bicycle routes to get that last mile. So to make it safe, so you're not walking on the shoulder of 309, the shoulder of Horsham Road, the shoulder of Upper State Road.
I missed the main meeting, but is SEPTA basically just leaving what we currently have?
They are replacing 132 with microtransit, but the microtransit zone only goes from Telford through Hatfield to Lansdale. It cannot come out Montgomery. So
It ends in
it ends in Lansdale.
Lansdale.
So it's actually a loss. It's a net loss.
Yes. It is a loss, and it's one that the township.
Because I know when
will
my
feel.
daughter worked at BJ's, her coworker would walk all the way to the mall to get the bus,
Right.
and then to get home.
Yeah, you shared that.
Well, she was like 16 years old, like Katie at the time would drive her over there, and we're talking 9 years later. But, yeah.
I mean, we're in constant communication with CETA, and although their official comment period is kind of closed,
Right.
because they're rolling out this program, and initially it's going to focus on the fixed route, improvements. The microtransit is going to come, they believe, at the end of next year and the following year. There's still time to kind of advocate for this. And as I mentioned to Derek at the beginning, it may be an idea for this group to write as an entity on behalf of business owners in the township, because it's really the grassroots stakeholders that they listen to highly. Their riders and the employers. So we as entities, we can advocate, we can say, but at the end of the day, are we going to be the riders? Are we going to be the beneficiaries of it? Not so much.
Employees are.
But
We could be the beneficiaries.
you would be,
Right.
absolutely greater beneficiaries potentially. So, the door is not completely closed, but the window's getting smaller and smaller as time goes on. They're looking at ways for the microtransit zone they're proposing. They want to keep it to a maximum of 2 vehicles per microtransit zone. So what feasibly can be done already, it's a large zone. But they haven't, finalized what that zone looks like. They did extend it from the earlier version, so that at least it goes to the hospital now. Lansdale Hospital, Abington Hospital. Before it was different configuration. So sorry to jump in there, but
I'm glad you did. I was sort of on your tag team.
Okay.
I know that one of the things that Carolyn referenced when we were talking was that Penn Medicine is proposing their new ambulatory care center. And at this point, for SEPTA to take microtransit out, just as we're having a new, really institutional type use coming in that could be very impactful for people and need to get there. employees and people, patients.
I think it's a good idea for us to talk about having as the partnership,
Mhm.
BDP, put together a letter and say, as, employers in the township, you feel the loss of, access to the microtransit system could be negatively impactful.
Yeah, actual loss of the 132
Right, what's the
Service.
like
and
taken away?
without, it comes from Telford.
It's
All
not
the way it goes, well, it winds down, a little bit of Path, then up.
Right, comes right behind the dealership.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people that
Right
use
across
that.
from Red Lobster.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was talking about
That's
walkability.
where I see people
Yeah.
standing.
A lot of people get off that bus right behind them, out that across from BJ's.
He would see.
Then they come through our lot and they run across the red line.
Right.
So,
Like Burger.
Yeah.
where they're going, so.
I actually have an email, where Judy details all those routes and everything too. I can forward that as reference.
Yeah, if you could forward it to me and if everyone on the committee is okay, you and I, since we're 2 doors down from each other, let's set up a time to kind of put together a letter and put it in front of, I'd like to get that out because of the short time before the next meeting. So you and I can draft something, put it out to the rest of the members of the committee. If everyone's okay with it, then I take it you have a contact over at SEPTA that we can make sure
Yeah,
it's seen.
yeah, we'll put it in the general portal and the connections that we get through the connections that we
Okay.
have, yeah.
Is everyone good with that?
Yeah.
All right.
I addressed the 132 too, because that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that was stuff that doesn't get used enough, but it seems like the ridership is starting to come back again. So we generally, in the mornings and, later in the day, there's usually 5 or 6 people waiting out there to get on, just at that little, stop there, and so I imagine there's other stops that people are going.
But the reason people may not use it is because it's not available. If it was more available and more communicated, maybe there would be more
Yeah.
ridership. Because you think, I know myself, you think about moving, we lived in Glenside, there was a lot more public transportation down that direction. But when I came here, I didn't even think that there was any.
It's so infrequent.
Right, right. So maybe if it was, and I'm sure that employers are feeling it, they could maybe get more additional help if there was, because everybody is struggling with staff.
The other thing you can do when you're writing the letter is, you have 2 state representatives in the letter, right?
We did.
Yeah, I would send that letter to both representatives also and have them exert their, political pressure they can on that.
ESS representative Melissa Serrato from most of the township. Then Star's 2 districts, a very small section in this quarter, and have the Montgomery. I can send their contact information with the email as well.
And then I just to briefly go through the last few recommendations, because they really do all touch on walkability. Improve the pedestrian circulation system through improvements to the sidewalk system and pedestrian crossings at street intersections, which I talked about a bit. Identify gaps in the pedestrian bicycling network and recommend specific improvements needed to fill these gaps in the system. And the township is looking at that as things arise. Provide pedestrian and bike trail connections to schools, parks, community facilities, and public transportation hub stops. That's what we're talking about, the missing links. And then the last one is not necessarily pedestrian, but promote and support the installation of electric vehicle infrastructure to improve air quality and support the township's ready for 100 renewable energy resolution.
How, the last point, how are you promoting and supporting the installation? Being in the automobile business, manufacturers, of course, we spend a lot of money to do just that, but how are you?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at right now is we're updating the zoning ordinances that we're looking at, proposing EV charging as an accessory use to any use within the township. So it would be permitted. And then if it's an EV fueling station where it's not just personal, there would be specific regulations that went with that, just as you have for other fueling stations. But actually solidifying that as developments come in, for instance, the Luxor again, asking for EV charging stations there, whatever multifamily is coming up, asking for EV charging stations.
As medicine had it in their plan,
Yeah.
like 20 of them. They had a
You know,
significant.
it's
Yeah, and
probably
they
whether we
know
want it or
what's
not,
right.
everybody's gonna be.
Yeah, so our thing, in order to prepare for that, what the township's been doing so far is making sure that the charging component is being proposed or enabled in all future developments as they come in, because people will need places to charge the cars once they purchase them. That's where we are right now.
Can I add one thing? Hello, everybody.
Hi, Beth.
Hi. Also, when Costco's gas station was approved, we required that they have the wiring for, they decided not to put in the chargers, but they are ready to put them in. They are all wired and ready to support that as the demand increases, which I think we're almost at that point. So they are ready to do that, as well as the Luxor and any other developments that come through. I believe in addition, there are some opportunities for grants and so forth that we're looking into to put in stations, as well as solar installations, which is obviously the best case scenario, because we have solar that would be generating the energy for the charging stations. So all those things are being looked at.
Yeah, to jump on that, this was May 8th, 2023, during the Board of Supervisors meeting. Carolyn received authorization to participate in the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission's grant opportunity, basically put EV stations at the Township Building, Community Rec Center, Wendell Street Park, and Sun Park. So that's 4 township owned properties as well.
Derek, do you say level 2s or 3s?
Those were 2s, I believe.
Yeah, you're gonna need level. You think pretty soon?
Yeah,
I say soon, I mean, 3 years from now.
the problem is those level 3s get raised for the price.
Well,
They're
and
not
also,
cheap.
Yeah,
for the price to get the higher electrical
Yeah.
service to it, that's the problem.
Yeah, the infrastructure does not exist.
Yeah, Pico has to run all new, you need them for buying a new transformer, to bring in the, what is it, 480 volt, service, and, yeah, because these are kilowatt chargers. So,
I'm waiting for when they, develop the next level of charging, this will be like 12, 15 minutes for the full charge.
yeah,
Maybe upgraded.
that's a whole other level of Pico.
So when you're putting a new development, that would be the time to do level 3, like
Well, they're
Luxor
looking
or
at
something, because it's a
Cycling
new
them
build.
for,
But
storage use,
for
for.
existing infrastructure, it may or may
For
not
storage for housing and
need
buildings.
some
they don't have to work
significant
the same
upgrades to the
way.
system to carry it.
And
Part of
any
it, so they-
construction
So
to
there
get,
there are ways to do
to
something
get
like that.
Pico to get that level
Use
of
it,
service
use
to
that,
them.
you know,
is very expensive.
technology.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's
I mean,
possible.
It's possible.
Building.
It's just possible.
Yeah.
Right, right. But like you say, is somebody going to sit at the rec center for 10 hours to charge on level 2?
Yeah, level 2.
That's the
They're
problem.
not-
It's an overnight
They'll
charge.
just leave it quiet, like they do at our dealership.
Yeah.
I think they were looking at
Someone picks them up and they'll leave it there overnight.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like your iPhone. One charge takes hours and then.
It's like our manufacturer makes us have the chargers available. Some of that for free.
We have one level 3 in the Nissan dealership, and I was surprised when Beth said that we were the only one in the township. But then I'm not surprised because it was $80,000.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to spend that kind of
And
money.
how long does it take to get a full charge on that level
About
versus?
an hour.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing was when we finally got it working properly, because it was not working properly for 2 years, these customers were charging for free. At the belligerent they got when they found out, oh no, you have to pay for it now.
Well, you have to pay for,
Yes,
I
yes.
sat through a session on Monday, last year in Rosetown Township when we were developing their ordinance. And I heard the greatest line there was, when you have a vehicle, you pay for the fuel that gets into it. The fuel for an EV happens to be electricity. You're expected to pay for electricity. It's not free. It's not being provided by everyone else to fuel your car. And I'll tell you that as we were dealing with this in other municipalities, the majority of people with electric vehicles realize that there's a charge for the electricity.
Not for whatever reason, not the customers are really putting off of us.
Yeah.
Well, if they were getting it for free and then all of a sudden they had to start paying, I think that's the.
That's the problem.
Well,
all
no,
of a
it's
sudden they
the,
start
they
getting.
think
Well,
the
once again,
dealership has to provide it for free
It
for
costs
everyone.
us
Their
on
car.
average $22 to $25 to fully charge a car. Shouldn't we get compensated for that? They didn't think that way, though. They didn't
Right, no,
think
I
that way.
agree,
It's
but it's the mentality of, well, we got it for free, now why are you?
because the machine was broken. That's the reason why. And the only reason why it finally got fixed, because Nissan wanted me to do it at Cherry Hill, at our other dealership. And I told Steve, our general manager, tell Nissan, I'm not spending a dime on any more infrastructure to get this one working.
Right.
And that's when things finally happened.
Wow.
So I have a general question. We have a lot of, we can influence a lot of people, like if they're coming in redeveloping a piece of land, we say, well, you know, we're gonna need, whether it's the electrical infrastructure for charging stations or a walk path or a sidewalk. We have the ability through the permitting process and oversight that the township has over property to say, these are some additional things that we would like to see in there. What about existing property that is not going to, you know, what kind of influence is there as the township to say, okay, I know you're not changing the use of this property, but we need, you know, a sidewalk installed.
If it's in the public right of way,
Mhm.
if it's a PennDOT road, PennDOT has that influence, and sometimes the township can do improvements with PennDOT's approval in the PennDOT right of way. If it's a local road, a township road, the township owns that right of way, could make the improvements, and depending on how your overall code works for your street sidewalks and road section, you may or may not then charge that person or landowner for those improvements. I don't know how your code reads, but some do read that you can make the improvements and then charge back to the person along the frontage. I don't know how yours reads up, but if the township were to get a grant to do something in the right of way, then the grant would pay for it and the township would usually have a match.
I mean, I think for the most part, the two main PennDOT roads that I see walkability problem on is Horsham and 309.
Yeah,
Those are
and,
both PennDOT.
right, and as applicants come in, they can be required to make improvements within their frontage of the PennDOT right of way, and they would then have to get the highway occupancy permit to do the construction. Existing, if there were an overall program happening along the frontage, you would just need construction easements possibly.
There was a business owner, the township came to the house and said, I want you to put sidewalks along Cowpath Road. And grandfather, they don't spend that money. What sidewalks, you spend the money.
That's what I'm saying, it would be a township initiative to do something with existing.
And then most likely they'd be required to maintain it thereafter.
Right.
For the initial installation.
But I'll tell you, for a good portion of the township, you know, in the time that I've been active since 2001, I mean, now I can go way back, but like since 2001, and I grew up in the area too, so I do know the area. But you can't believe the number of properties that have come in for adaptive reuse or redevelopment. Some of them multiple times. When we look up and down 309, a little less on Cow Path, but not as much on Cow Path.
It's not, well, our end is not, they swell with drainage basins. We did our last land development years ago. They took money from us, I guess, and put it on in escrow to do that at some time, but until, you know, you get past it, it's not really people coming behind us. They're going, you know, towards Lansdale, they need sidewalks down there. There's no sidewalks from there on. And there's nobody really walking from our place. Can't cross 309, whatever.
Which one are you?
Lansdale, we're right north of that.
Okay.
So we're on Cowpath and 309.
Yeah.
But, you know, you need it. You almost have to do the residents were gonna allow sidewalks to be built from Line Street up to the Five
Yeah,
Points.
there's
I
no
think
sidewalks that whole stretch.
I would be in, but just to come and say, build a sidewalk and,
Yeah.
at some point it'll be useful, unless it's big waste.
The purpose of, promoting walkability and pedestrian access isn't to say that, boom, sidewalks are everywhere at once. You start looking at the ones where there's the greatest need and the greatest inherent danger, where people are walking in dangerous places already, which is why the township was looking at the area along 309 between the mall and Airport Square that, from DeKalb to North Wales Road.
Yeah, I have a question. So side paths,
Yes,
so sidewalks, pedestrian infrastructure, side paths, shared use, correct? And side paths being narrower than a trail but wider than a sidewalk, so that bicyclists can share with pedestrians.
right.
We don't hear a lot about side path infrastructure going in. And yet, we know that like one of the greatest, well, the greatest deterrent for people using bicycles for transportation is safety.
Right.
People are concerned about riding on the road, understandably, even with bike lanes, which we don't have anyway. So that's something that many of the roads aren't suitable, et cetera, yada, yada. So I'm thinking, like, why is there any consideration or thought, discussion about side paths instead of sidewalks? Because that gives a greater opportunity as a transportation infrastructure, so that it's not just walkability, it's walkability and bikeability.
Right now.
And maybe, it's cost, I mean, a greater cost, I would imagine, given raw materials being slightly wider.
Right, well, and in Montgomery Township, it's not just the cost of materials, it's getting that width sometimes.
Right.
Like to get the 5 feet for a sidewalk, sometimes it's difficult enough. 10 feet for a full trail might be excessive. The side path ends up being between 6 and 8.
Yeah, okay.
And to do that, like if you're gonna do 8, 8's really the minimum for a hike and bike together. So get something between 6 and 8, that would be ideal if we could. The problem still is that doesn't do it for the hardcore commuter bicyclist. That does it for the recreation bicyclist, but not for the commuter. The commuters really wanted, they still, from our information from the people that commute, they want to go faster. People walking or in their way, it's a greater impediment to them than being in traffic. Which is, it surprised me when I heard that. But then again, I'm considered a recreational bicyclist. I'm not a commuting bicyclist.
We were just in Vancouver for 3 days, and I was amazed at how well, it's a much bigger area, how well planned that city is. You have the sidewalks, which are wider than our sidewalks. Then you have a 2-way bike lane, just like traffic that's, 6, 8 feet wide. And then you have
And all striped, right? And usually,
Yeah, striped and
it's usually the color green. Yeah.
And then you have a berm or a little sidewalk in between that, so it separates you from traffic, but then they still have 4 lanes of traffic. So, and everybody stays in their lane. The walkers stay on the sidewalk, the bicyclists stay in the bike lanes, nobody's riding in the street, and then the cars are,
And
it was just so well planned out. I said, man, it'd be great if they, city planners would think that far.
well,
ahead,
and you can do that with new streets, but when we try to make new complete streets, we can do that. It's just a matter of something has to give,
Yeah.
and we haven't got the funding for it. So when you look at, 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, it might end up being 2 lanes in each direction with turning lanes, and then you do have the bike would be on one side, 2-way. You wouldn't put it on each side, you put the one.
So I thought it was cool. I'd never seen that. That
Yeah.
makes so much more sense.
But that's, Vancouver's not a new city, so obviously at some point they had to take existing roads and.
I don't really know the answer.
It's far more common in cities, okay, because of
Yeah.
the congestion, because of the lack of parking, because of the population density.
Because
When it comes out here in the suburbs, you've got that, it's not as clear a need, as high a need, I would say, as the,
cities were originally built for pedestrians.
right.
Pedestrians and different modes of transportation. Cities are built more for pedestrians. The suburbs were built by definition for the cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
get
Yeah,
that.
no, thank you.
But obviously, the city planners in Vancouver figured out some way to take the existing infrastructure and convert it. So
It just took
it's-
funding.
It's just,
It's
yeah,
funding.
politics is money.
And political will, because they see the economic benefits of being able to get more people to places they need to be as quickly as possible, as least cost as possible,
Yeah.
right? And transit can't do it all, so they have to have the multimodal approach.
Yeah, and they're, you know, they have, their gas is $2 a liter. $7 a gallon, so they're a little more into.
And I've been spending a bit of time in Israel lately. Tel Aviv's a great example also. You know, along the promenade, along the Mediterranean, you have, you know, your roads, you have the two-way bike lane, you have the pedestrian area closest to the beach with crosswalks, and you have the separate lane for the electric scooters. Electric scooters, electric bikes have their separate lane.
Yeah, I mean, we're working with the bike group, Bike North Penn, and, you know, dealing with the realities that we have and trying to get something done in our lifetime. Seriously, you know, that's why I brought up the side package, because many of our roads, they're just not going to carry bike lanes, period, without like multi-million-dollar changes, right? So in the meantime, what could be done possibly is if we're having condition of use for side path, can we look and see if there's potential to, sorry, for sidewalk, is there space to make it a side path so that we have a little bit more utility from that, you know, requirement.
And sometimes an 8-foot wide macadam pathway is less expensive to build than a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk, because concrete needs to be formed. It's the labor and the time to form the concrete. So the extra width, depending on cost of bituminous paving at that time, might actually be a wash. When the price of oil and petroleum goes way up, that doesn't work. If the price is down a little, it works. And it's all because of the labor involved in forming concrete, which you guys know.
But what about the durability of the concrete versus the macadam? I think the longevity, I thought the longevity of concrete was more, and therefore,
Depends. It depends. One thing that absolutely kills concrete, especially in this environment, is that it's salting, it salts it.
Right.
And if you have someone who's crazy with that,
Right,
you're
and then-
going to destroy it in a couple of years.
right, and the bituminous pathways are dark, so they absorb the height, so they're light and heat, so there's a little more melting of things. People also tend to throw less salt on the bituminous because you can see it. On the concrete, they stop when they're crunching too much on their feet, basically. But yeah, concrete is constantly oversalted. And a lot of the trails or side paths aren't always cleared in ice and snow, but if they're going to be used as commuter routes, they would need to get cleared.
But then there's also disclaimers they post, you know, this trail is not cleared for snow. You know what I mean? And, you know, again, you know, how many, is that small amount of people who rely 100% on a bicycle for commuting, and then there's others who choose it as an option when the weather's, you know, better.
Right.
So again, it's like what can be done, how much can we do, and it's not.
That's something, well, we're looking to do some more side paths, Jackie, thank you.
one other question that I have, you used the term traffic calming.
Yes.
devices.
That's a whole world of, what is
That
that?
opens up, I mean, it could be anywhere from, you know, speed bumps to, you know, the overhead lights indicating pedestrian crossing, which is, I think, what they're putting in on Keenest.
Yes, for the
Um,
pedestrian crossing.
Which is,
And upper state, right?
and upper state is Spring Valley.
Okay. Is that what the township is considering, or
They're,
God forbid, speed bumps through?
they're going to look at what's appropriate for the specific application where it's needed. Chicanes come into there too, just to sort of change the route. There's a whole world of traffic calming.
Landscaping, trees.
Yeah.
You know, the chickens, I know that's very topic for Hatfield right now, almost.
And chicanes were that popular in Doylestown Borough in front of Central Bucks last year. What are they? Chicanes, it shifts your,
You can,
It's on-
if you don't have a township on Walnut Street between 309 and County Line Road, you'll see what that is.
usually involves, you know, on-street parking and sort of switching so that, imagine like 3 lanes, 1 lane is parking and 2 lanes are travel, so they'd be parking here and then they'd be parking there and then travel lanes move. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
Yeah, so you would need to slow to navigate that. Or be speed
Interesting.
racer. Yeah, but there's a whole world of traffic calming that's involved. So it's not saying, yes, we're putting speed bumps, humps, or tables everywhere. We're not putting chicanes. We're like, it's not just throw something out in general.
Mm.
As it's needed, Damon and our traffic engineers would look at that specific place.
And then the work, my last question, the work that has been done up on 309 at the lights right at the mall, right in front of, was that Chick-fil-A, I guess? Is that where the pedestrian crosswalk is expected to go in? Is that why the township did all that work there or PennDOT?
The crosswalk is going in at the light.
There are like
Which
5 lights there.
There's a light where out of the mall, and then there's the jug handle going into Airport Square.
That's south
Yes.
of Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, south of Chick-fil-A.
So the next one north from, or not North Wales, from
Upper State.
Upper State.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then we're looking at long-term pedestrian crosswalks and pedestrian feasibility at the light at North Wales and 309, and that's in conjunction with some of the improvements that were required from hashtag called,
Village of Windsor.
thank you, Village of Windsor. We call it hashtag, we stand, that's what the building looks like that. Yeah, Village of Windsor, and then also, the quarter properties in fund development.
And Chase.
And yeah, and Chase, but the problem at that intersection is the Batteries Plus is right
Right.
there, right, yeah.
On the street.
And the intersection is not square. It's,
That's true.
It's a very strange polygon there.
But what about at 5 Points? I know PennDOT's talking about doing a major renovation, revamping their outer limits. And start.
That's supposed to start 20 years ago.
I know.
Yeah, you know what, I don't have the answers on the 5 points, but I could get them from David. I know it's a PennDOT project.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
I've been stressing pedestrians, but I'm not sure, I can't tell you what's in the PennDOT project now, because it has been on the books for.
Because that would impact you.
Yeah, they already bought property from us, from Tony. Tony's losing a lot of frontage there,
Yeah.
almost a full width of this. Parking spots, we really lost mostly grass as you come further up. I think we lose our decel lane coming in the dealership.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also
It's
depends on
just
the
park the
project.
trucks in the middle of the road.
It's not that, the decel lane keeps people from, when traffic backs up and people feel the brake coming up the hill, they kind of shoot over into our decel lanes, so they don't run into the back of the car. I don't know what's gonna look like when it's done, but it's been, we sold the property to them probably now 5 or 6 years ago. And,
Well, that intersection's on the tip plan right now, I believe, so. And then also part of that, like another, like sort of appendage of that sidewalk and improvements coming up along Horseshoe Road also.
I think the big part of that
Right,
thing
this
is
was an issue.
they want to put in a right turn lane, go back on the cow path. For some reason, they think that's why that intersection is backed up sometimes, but I don't get it, but
That's the timing.
but they're gonna widen that whole thing at 5. Turn lane, go back on the cow path, and from what I understand.
Yeah, and I
It's that left
don't know
turn
how
on the
this
portion that screws up the.
It's gonna be tough business to last for. It's-
Any other questions? Anything else that you wanted to address?
No, I was just really here to kind of give you guys the feel for where the township was, where they are today, and where they're looking in the future with walkability.
I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great information. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.